The play chapter ended up being so much fun, and it was a light blue cloud for me. I definitely think it helped for me to let go of the pressure that I felt to have fun as I was entering the play chapter. As soon as I let that go, fun naturally started to arrive. And I think this might be one of my favorite chapters as I'm going through the Authenblissity Reset this time. Whereas the last couple of times I did the exercises, and as well when I was writing this chapter, it was definitely lower on the list. Let's jump right into the title page for this chapter. As you can see, I decided to do a puzzle theme, and it was really fitting because I have rediscovered my love for puzzles. I have a whole video on that, but really puzzles are top of mind right now, and I'm having a lot of fun with them. The quote I chose for this chapter is attributed to Viola Spolin, and it reads, "Play touches and stimulates vitality, awakening the whole person, mind and body, intelligence and creativity, spontaneity and intuition." Same type of layout in terms of a table of contents for the exercises. Once again, I did all of the exercises recommended in each section, and in the explore section, I chose 3 exercises to complete. In previous chapters, the reaction exercise was basically a wall of text. I listened to myself reading the personal story, and then I just jot down my reactions. But this time I felt really drawn to drawing. What I ended up doing was drawing the sequence of steps, if you will, for jump seats, which is a game that my friends and I used to play when I was in grade 3. It was just really fun to reminisce on one of my favorite games from my past. With my word cloud, I basically took play and I tried to find words that I associate with play that start with the letters in play, so P-L-A-Y. For the letter P, I chose the word pleasure, and I listed a few things that bring me pleasure when it comes to play, so things like puzzling, reading, making things, and so on. For the letter L, I chose laughter, and this includes games with friends, funny movies or shows, being silly, and that sort of thing. For A, I chose awe, and these are things that I really enjoy doing that give me a sense of wonder, so it's play in the form of learning, ideating, experimenting, and so on. And finally for Y, I chose young at heart, so these are things like frisbee, cartwheels, and climbing, things I really like to do to tap into my inner child. A lot of this involves movement, which I found really interesting. The pendulum exercise was neat because I realized that there are a lot of things I don't really care to talk about with people, but with play, I really enjoy talking about different hobbies and things we're interested in. So this was kind of a neat realization for me. I also realized that even though I'm not that knowledgeable about play, it doesn't really bother me, whereas I feel much more discomfort if I'm not knowledgeable about other topics in my life. Maybe the money chapter would be a good example, where I feel a lot of discomfort and imposter syndrome, whereas play, I don't really need to know the science behind it. I know I enjoy it, and for me that is enough. Moving into the observe section, I had a really fun week of self-observation. I basically puzzled every single day, but I also had a few other key noticings, like it felt really good to have teamwork with hubby during the puzzle competition that we went to on day 1 of my self-observation. I also made baklava on day 2, which felt like a lot of fun. So the entire week wasn't just puzzles, but puzzles was definitely the recurring theme. In terms of my observations, I think the main one that I want to touch on is how different I feel now in terms of my level of wanting to be in competitions. So I think when I was younger, maybe in my teens and 20s, I was much more competitive. I enjoyed competing. I enjoyed winning. I didn't like to lose. I don't have that anymore. I did notice this change around the time that I left my full-time job, but I didn't really think about it too much. But now I realize that I really don't like competition. I prefer games and such that don't really have a winner. I like collaborative games. I like working together and that sort of thing. And even when I'm in a competition, like the puzzle competition that hubby and I went to, which was just for fun, I didn't feel any sort of way about not coming in first, second, third, etc. In fact, hubby and I came in 7th out of 20 teams, and I felt really really good about that. I still like to try to set myself up to do well, but I don't feel any sort of way if my results are just average. Moving to the explore section, I chose to complete favorites, routine, and delight. I have a lot of favorite things to do when it comes to play, but the ones that I listed were puzzling, of course, reading, organizing, trying new things, and listening to music. And I jotted down a few notes about how each of these shows up in my life. In terms of the routine exercise, I mapped out my morning routine and my evening routine, and it was really neat to see the threads of how I integrate play into my day. What I realized from this exercise is that the main things that I need in order to feel playful, in order for me to feel like I'm having fun, are freedom and variety. I really value both of these things, and as long as I have both, everything feels really fun to me. Even things like doing chores and working, these are things that I might feel very resistant towards, but when I end up doing them, I actually do have a decent time, if not a good time. Sometimes I do have a good time cleaning if I'm listening to a really good podcast or if I'm listening to music. And work feels really good when I get into the flow. Delight was my favorite exercise of all. I just love doing whatever I want, whenever I want. And I had a weekend of delight, which happened to be Pokemon Go Fest. I ended up drawing my weekend, which was really so much fun for me. I wish I had more of an inclination to draw because when I do draw, I really enjoy it. I ended up drawing a couple of Pokemon. These were released on that weekend. I'm still really on a puzzle kick, and I tend to want to do a puzzle every single day. On the Saturday, I did a puzzle called Rabbit Recital, which is one of my favorites, and I drew the little rabbit that appears in that image. And then on Sunday, I did a Tree of Life puzzle, which ended up taking me almost 3 hours for 500 pieces, so that was quite long. It was kind of a challenging puzzle for me. Now we're moving into the connect section, and as you can see, I did something very different for the memories exercise. I did a little sticker collage. I still do sticker collages every month because I am trying to use up my stickers, and it's just a fun way for me to express myself. A lot of the stickers that you see on this page are from my childhood days. I had these sticker sheets of black and white stickers that you could color. I've colored a few of them, but the majority of them are still in black and white, so I decided to go ahead and use a bunch of them on this page because they do remind me of my childhood and how much I loved my sticker collection. I also really loved fuzzy stickers. I still do, so I have tons of fuzzy stickers all over the page. This page was super fun to put together, and maybe one day I will color the stickers, or maybe I'll leave them as is. Time will tell. Disentangling was a neat exercise. Not a whole lot came up for me, but one thing that I know I want to let go of is any should that I feel around play. So the should I used to feel was that I should play less and do something more productive, but I've really moved past that over the years. But when I move past things, I often go to the other extreme. So now the should that I feel around play is that I should play more, or perhaps I should play differently. And I want to let that go as well. I want to be in my sweet spot for play, so I want to play just enough, not too little, but also not too much. Because when I spend 5 hours on a puzzle in one day, that means I don't have time to do the other things I enjoy. So while I love puzzles, and I would very happily spend 5 hours a day on a puzzle, I don't feel great afterwards though, because I'm missing the variety that I really need to feel fulfilled. So when I spend too long on one type of play or on one activity, the variety aspect goes out the window for me, and then it stops feeling like play. Next, we'll talk about perceptions and perspective, and I was really surprised and happy to realize that my inner critic has become very quiet in the area of play, whereas even maybe just a year ago, she was pretty vocal. My inner critic likes to judge the ways I like to play as being boring or nerdy, but I am a boring nerd at heart, and I've started to embrace that. So I find that my inner critic now functions more as that voice to make sure I get enough variety. When I do something for too long, my inner critic starts to say, you know, you've been doing this for a long time, you still have this thing you said you wanted to do, you still have this thing you said you wanted to do, and so on and so forth. So she kind of gives me a nudge to make sure I get enough variety in my life, to make sure I'm ticking off all of the things I say I want to do. She's not super critical about it, but she is a little bit of a nag, but it's in a way that I feel is really helpful to me. My inner best friend serves kind of a similar function. She seems to like to remind me that I burnt out on that 5,000 piece puzzle that I completed earlier this year, and I didn't want to touch puzzles for many months after that. So she reminds me that play can sometimes be too much of a good thing, and she also reminds me to stay balanced. So I feel like my inner critic and my inner best friend are fairly united within the topic of play. They have similar messages, but just delivered slightly differently. My inner critic is a little bit more naggy, and my inner best friend is a little bit more gentle and playful in her approach. I also did something a little bit different for interconnections. It looks similar to the previous chapters, but what I ended up doing was under each category, I wrote down the ways I like to play or the things that I've done that feel playful. For example, under food, I wrote Eat at Home Challenge, which feels like a way to play for me. I like to gamify many different aspects of my life to infuse more play and playfulness into my days. The last section is Reflect, and Pendulum Redux was interesting, but nothing groundbreaking. I realized I don't really like to seek recommendations or advice in any aspect of my life. But with play, I'm a little bit more open to it. I might not seek recommendations, but if someone does make a recommendation, I am not as resistant as the other areas in my life. In the looking up exercise, I wrote 5 statements that really resonate with me, and I'll share my looking up statement when I go through the summary. And finally, for the treasures exercise, I had a few interesting realizations for this chapter, but the main thing that this chapter brought to me was just this overall sense of fun and playfulness. I loved this chapter, and what I'm most grateful for in terms of the topic of play is my willingness to play, especially when there's so much external noise about achievement and success and productivity. I just really appreciate my brain's ability to find fun in everyday things. All right, the summary page. This is where I share my looking up statements from the 3 times I did the Authenblissity Reset. The first time was in September of 2021, and my looking up statement was, I see myself as someone who infuses fun, playfulness, and light into everything I do. My second time going through the play reset was in January of 2023, and my looking up statement was, I see myself as someone who is comfortable with not doing things perfectly or being the best when it comes to play. Now with hindsight, I'm thinking this is around the time that I had that aha moment that competition doesn't feel that great to me anymore. And finally, during this play reset, my looking up statement is, I see myself as someone who views play as a way to enhance all areas of my life. So where my first reset was about me integrating play into my life, now I realize play is also a way to enhance how I feel about work, about creativity, about spirituality, about food, about money, and so on and so forth. That was a really neat realization about how symbiotic play is with all the aspects of my life, not only because I try to integrate play into my life, but by doing so, play enhances all of those different aspects of my life. That is going to be it for the play chapter. I had so much fun with this one, and I'm really relieved that I had fun. I'm feeling really good as I enter into the next chapter, which is work. So I'll be back with the intro video for that very shortly. Until then, please take care and bye for now.